Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to the next episode of Shameless Cashgrab. We're in the home stretch here, only 4 movies left to go, starting with 1984's Mutant, starring Bo Hopkins, don't know who that is, Jodie Medford, don't know who that is, and Wings Hauser. I do know who he is, and if you've watched a lot of 80s and 90s action movies, you probably know who he is too. Although you may not know his name, you may know him as that guy who was in that thing. Anyway, the previous movie, Slipstream, kind of set a high bar for the rest of the set. So, who knows if these next 4 movies will be any good, but I'll be able to tell you how I felt about Mutant in just a moment.
Alright, so now I have watched the movie, 1984's Mutant. But before I go into it, let me just go ahead and give you the plot summary, courtesy of ye olde IMDb. 2 brothers discover that the residents of a small southern town are being infected by a form of toxic waste, turning them into blood-ravenous zombies. Short and to the point. As for the movie itself, I think the title, or at least this title, more on that in a second, is a bit misleading. One does not usually associate the word mutant with the word zombie, or with the word vampire, but again, more on that in a moment. Still, I want to give this movie a fair shake, so let's dive right in. And right off the bat, I have to go off on something I didn't expect to be talking about much at all with these movies, yet have had to for like the last 3 films. The music. Oh wait, that's right, I talked about the music with Krull as well, because that was like the best part. Anyway, the music for Mutant. Specifically, how the opening music for Mutant is too damn loud. I'm serious. It's certainly not my headphones. If anything, lately the sound in these things has not been so good. I may need to get a new pair soon, so if it's too loud through these things, yikes. Well, at least it doesn't stay that way through the whole movie, I'll give it that. If I wanted to do a show about film soundtracks, I'd be doing a show about film soundtracks. Maybe even co-hosting it with Tim Morris. Who knows? Anyway, Mutant, or Night Shadows as it's called on Letterboxd, and in a few other places too, but mostly it's called Mutant. It opens pretty generically. Dark of night, mysterious figure walking towards the house, nothing special. This guy's definitely not one of our protagonists, though, and not just because he isn't Wings Hauser, but he takes samples of some yellow stuff on the ground outside the house, before letting himself into the basement of said house. 3 guesses as to if this guy survives, and the first 2 don't count. At this point, we jump to Wings Hauser driving a car with his brother, his character's brother, who recently got dumped, so the 2 are in the country to get away from it all for a while. A generic movie plot so generic that it can be used by both horror movies and character-driven dramas. Actually, it can be used by slapstick comedies, too. And romantic comedies. Actually, lots of movies can use the going to the country to get away from it all for a while plot. I think even some animes have done that. Anyway, our hero endears himself quickly by nearly getting himself and his brother killed by driving with his eyes closed after said brother complains that he isn't paying enough attention to the road. This is the guy the movie wants us to root for. Not a great start. And, oh hey, rednecks. Wouldn't be a horror movie that takes place in the country without rednecks. And not the charming kind of rednecks like in Tucker and Dale vs. Evil either. Yeah, by the way, I'm recording this a little less than a month before Halloween. I don't know if Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is still available for streaming on Netflix, but if it is, and you haven't seen it, watch it. Great movie. Anyway, yeah, so the rednecks turn around and they run our main characters, Josh and Mike, respectively. I'm going to try and use the characters' names from here on out. They run them off the road. And here's where we get the horror movie standard, the kooky old man spouting exposition. Not kooky enough for my tastes, but that actually does end up paying off later, so, point to the movie on that one. After picking up Josh and Mike trying to hitchhike to the next town after their car ends up in a creek, the 1984 Southern Stereotype of the Year nominee tells them he's been hunting little green men that are either Martians or perverts. That is what he said. I am dead serious. Speaking of dead, our second kill of the movie comes in the form of the town drunk. Now, the interesting thing about these zombies, or toxic vampires, depending on which plot summary you read, is how they kill their victims. They lightly grab them around the neck with one or both icky-looking hands, and what I assume is supposed to be steam comes from where they've been grabbed, implying that their necks are being burned by contact with the skin of the zombie/vampire. Zompire? Well, of course, by interesting, I mean fucking lame. Mike finds the body of said town drunk and goes into a bar that has Confederate flags on the walls, because of course it does, and the rednecks who ran them off the road happen to be there, because of course they are. Boy, I sure hope these guys get killed by the hideous, neck-touching, toxic zombie vampire things. Wow, that sounds lame. This movie's monsters are lame, you guys. So, bar fight, local sheriff breaks it up and tells the city boys to leave town ASAP, sees more of the yellow goo, yada yada. A half hour in, Mike gets killed by one of the not-zombies with the toxic hand. That will never not sound silly, will it? Anyway, if it seems like not a lot has happened at the half-hour mark, that's because you're right. This movie is pretty boring. And even it seems to know it, as when Josh wakes up and goes into town looking for Mike, see, he doesn't know his brother's dead yet, the entire town seems to have fucked off except for one lady who works in the bar where the fight was earlier. The lady that works at the bar, or I should say also works at the bar, shall be referred to from here on out as Hot Teacher, because that's basically her role in the rest of the movie. And seeing the bar better lit, there are even more Confederate flags than I thought there were, so here's hoping the damn place burns down by the end of the movie. We do get some brief excitement when the blood supply at the local clinic gets stolen. So, yeah, vampires. Zombies, vampires, toxic mutants. Getcha a monster that can do all three. Ha! Yeah, okay, you know what, screw it, I'm just calling them vampires. Or hand vampires. There you go. You know, these things are really too smart to be zombies. You know, well, most forms of zombies anyway. You know, your classic voodoo zombies, your Romeros, your 28 Days Later types, and yes, that counts, shut up. But then we get back to the bland. You know, we have Hot Teacher and a badly ADR'd child. Josh finds a dead girl's body, and Redneck, who just happens to be the janitor at the school because the plot convenience fairy is having a fire sale, accuses Josh of killing her, and honestly, these things I'm describing would actually be interesting in a better-made movie, but except for the town doctor, you know, from the clinic where the blood was stolen, none of the characters in this movie are all that interesting. Or likable, for that matter. I mean, Sheriff gets a little better once we get more of his backstory, but anyway, everyone's either a jerk or a stereotype or both. The fight scene between Mike and the Redneck is basically a sword fight with metal pipes, but nowhere near as exciting as that sounds. Yeah, a little bit after that, spin on. Mercifully, we are spared what could have been one of the most unearned sex scenes in cinematic history, when Josh starts experiencing pain caused by getting some of the toxic substance on him, the yellow stuff, when the dead girl fell on him. So the question is begged. Will the movie take the most obvious horror movie route and have him turn, forcing the teacher/bartender he met to be the archetypal final girl and kill him? Or will the doctor find a cure at the last minute? More importantly, will I actually care? Let's find out. So after this, the local doctor basically confirms what the viewer pretty much had figured out, unless they weren't paying any attention. The creature, filled with toxic waste, somehow, develops leech-like openings on their hands, somehow, and uses it to drink blood. So, you know, they're toxic zombie vampire leeches. Yeah, I'm sticking with hand vampires for now. Yeah, I know, it's not really a great name either, but toxic zombie vampire leeches. I think that might have been one of Eastman and Laird's rejected ideas. Anyway, the doctor has her theories confirmed while she's recording them, so hey, points for not having to wait, when her assistant transforms out in the hallway in exactly the way she hypothesized happening to the little girl. Basically, imagine if in An American Werewolf in London, the main character transformed into a werewolf, while someone in the next room was reciting the stages of werewolf transformation into a tape recorder. Not sure if this was meant to be funny or if the writers just had that little faith in the audience. Could be both, I suppose. Sadly, we must pour one out for the most likable character in the movie, as the doctor ends up being killed by her transformed assistant. And there's still 40 minutes left to go, so I guess that rules out the last-minute cure. And then it turns out a mining company, or energy company, I guess it's a little vague, might be behind the chemical that's turning people into hand vampires. See, the train doesn't like the name hand vampires either. That's why it did that. Anyway, this movie is clearly way off the mark in blaming a mining company for turning people into toxic creatures that drink blood. No, sir. They just make your tap water flammable and cause earthquakes in Oklahoma. Josh figures this all out after climbing a fence with a no trespassing sign because I guess he figured since he can't find his brother, he'd better contribute something to the plot. And wouldn't you know it, the kooky old man from earlier is there too. He works for the company causing this mess. I'll admit it, I didn't see that coming. I'll give him that. I just figured he was just your bog-standard horror movie creepy old man. And you know what? I kind of have a soft spot for the bog-standard horror movie creepy old man. Sadly, kooky old man and some of his cronies end up dead. Well, I say sadly, they're technically the bad guys, but you know, it's never pleasant to say goodbye to the creepy old man in these movies. They end up dead when a hot teacher crashes her car through the door to save Josh's life, and these folks get some of their own toxic, yellow goo that's turning people into hand vampires on them. And a thought occurs. Hand vampires. The openings on their hands are like leeches. So, did the creators of Stargate Atlantis have this movie in mind when they created the Wraith? One other thing about this movie that bothers me. The assistant, the hot teacher's uncle, etc., when they transform into the hand vampires, screw it, I'm not going to be able to come up with a better name. When they transform, they groan. Like, a lot. The assistant did it just out in the hallway of the clinic with the door open. The hot teacher's uncle, just upstairs. So how in 20 fucks does no one hear them? Hot teacher almost dies because she doesn't find anything suspicious about her sick uncle making inhuman noises. It was lucky for her the sheriff and Josh showed up in the nick of time. But, hey, it looks like the rednecks from earlier are dead now. Well, sort of. They're also hand vampires, so I guess that doesn't count. And, spin on, spin on, spin on. Josh finds Mike's body. Apparently, whatever killed him healed the knife wound he'd gotten on his arm in the bar fight earlier in the movie.
Great continuity!
This surprises no one, not even some of the other characters. That Josh is dead, I mean, not the continuity. This gets followed by something that's actually not that common in horror movies overall. A child character dies. A named child character dies. Yep. At the school, which is where the three known surviving adults in town, Josh, hot teacher, and sheriff, were set to meet. Hot teacher met up with one of her students, who is understandably scared out of his wits. Mere seconds after she was able to convince the poor kid she wasn't one of the hand vampires, the bathroom where she finds him is stormed by a bunch of the other school children who, you guessed it, are hand vampires. And hot teacher tries, but lacks the upper body strength to keep poor Billy, that was the kid's name, from being pulled away and swarmed by the kids who eat blood by burning holes in your flesh with toxic waste. They do this to a child. Damn, movie, that's hardcore. Though I now realize there is another issue with this film's monsters. Their IQ level seems to vary from scene to scene. One moment they have the wherewithal to use trap doors and hide the bodies of their victims, but the next they just shamble around like the zombies the IMDb summary said they were. Consistency, movie, that's all I ask. I can accept a lot of silly things, so long as they are consistent in their silliness. I'll give the movie this much, though. The climax actually feels like a legit horror movie staple. The last stand with our remaining heroes bunkered down, safe but surrounded. Real Dawn of the Dead type stuff. Except unlike most of those types of movies, the cavalry actually shows up. In a shocking display of competence from law enforcement in a horror movie, our heroes are saved from the horde of hand vampires at the end by the county police showing up in force. The sheriff, who earlier in the movie we were supposed to think was dead, but seeing as we didn't see his body, it was kind of a given that he was going to show up again, he went and got them. So, Stranger Things similarities. Small town sheriff with a drinking problem? Check. A dark backstory for said sheriff? Check. A dead child, though actually dead in the movie. Check. Shady corporation whose actions lead to monsters running around. Check. I think so far, Mutant/Night Shadows is the most Stranger Things-esque movie in the set so far. So, hey, there's a bonus point for that. Final verdict. Bonus points aside, I'm not sure how I'm going to rank this one when it comes time to do the follow-up episode. I mean, obviously I didn't hate it as much as My Mom's a Werewolf, so there's that. And it had at least a few characters with some redeeming qualities, unlike Lurkers. But on the other hand, it's not crazy fun like The Hearse, or rockin' a great soundtrack like Krull. I don't know where it's going to go on the list, but one thing's for sure, unless you are a Wings Hauser fan or an 80s horror movie completionist, I don't think I can recommend this movie to you, even though it does get a little bit better in the last act. I mean, it's not even really that it's a horrible movie, it's just... It probably would have actually been more interesting if it was just straight up bad. Mutant/Night Shadows is just kind of there. It's a thing that exists.